guys, so on Tumblr, this is probably one of my most asked questions, and it's how I make my Fionna sword, or my crystal sword. Okay, so just to warn you, this isn't going to be like a step-by-step tutorial, but I'm going to give you all the information you need in order to create your own crystal sword. So I have two versions here. This is my favorite one right here. It looks more crystally. This was the first one I made, and I like it. This is actually more durable. First, I'll start off with my first one I made. So the first thing I did was just had a couple of reference pictures throughout the process. That really helps me, and it helped me kind of like draft out the patterns that I wanted. So I just drafted out my patterns on some poster board. It was like putting together a 3D puzzle, and I glued it together with just hot glue. So you can have an idea of my process. This was the first piece that I made, and I basically built everything around this piece. I looked at the picture a lot to just try and get my proportions pretty close. I mean, there's some shots where the sword is huge and some shots where it's a more like this size. So like I said, this was my foundation piece, and that piece is this piece right here, and then everything went off of that. Special note, this piece right here was really hard for me to do, or these two pieces right here were really hard for me to do. You kind of, everything else you can kind of measure out and put together. This one, it just fits weird, and I don't know. I thought it was just like this point, however long, and this point can match this point. But it's like, I don't know. If you want it to lay like this, I say just play with it, just cut away, and it was a little bit of a nightmare, but once you get one piece you can cut it out 4 times and then you'll be good to go. So I glued the blade together, I glued these pieces together, and then you'll have an opening here, and then I just cut a circle in the top part of this piece, and that is because I stuck a piece of PVC pipe through here. It was a very narrow piece, that big. I mean, it could be a little bit bigger or smaller. I just wanted it to be stable. If you don't know what PVC piping is, this is it. I used a much smaller piece than this. This would be kind of, would get heavy after carrying it around all day, but yes. So right now you have this glued together, you have the pipe through it. So I was just gonna paint it after I did all that, but I didn't like how all the seams, they weren't perfect and they were kind of uneven. So I decided to put white latex caulk on it just to kind of blend all the seams together. I just kind of squirted some on and tried to squeegee it out. If you look closely, it is not that smooth, but you know, I'm okay with the finish. The seams just look a little bit better. Then after that, I just took, I used pearl paint because I wanted it to have like an iridescent kind of, because it is a crystal. So I wanted it to have an iridescent kind of look, so I just painted it with just some acrylic pearl paint. So then after that, all that is dry, is the handle. I had the PVC pipe extend for the handle, so that's what I worked the handle off of. The first thing I did was wrap some of this twine. You can use yarn or whatever string or rope you want to. I just wrapped it going back and forth, trying to make sure it's thicker here and more narrow here. And then I put I wrapped this with duct tape. I used white duct tape because I thought it would be better to paint. And then I just used a darker pink gloss paint. I'm gonna definitely say use the gloss paint because the matte paint has a tendency to chip off really easy. Again, these are just pieces glued on together, glued onto here, and painted. That's it. But I wasn't completely satisfied because this wasn't as smooth, but I was gonna be okay with it. I mean, I thought this was pretty good. But then I saw this at the store and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm making another one. So of course I needed to make it pink, and the first thing I thought was like those cellophane goodie bags that you get like at birthday parties. So I got some goodie bags to cover it with. I thought these were cellophane, but they actually ended up being just plastic. But you could probably use cellophane too. I'm going to show you how I cut the piece, the plastic bag, to try and use as much of it as possible. There's one seam right here, so if your bag is like this one, then this will work for you. So I just cut that off. I just cut down any of the other seams. So for the holographic crystal sword, you're gonna have to wrap each piece before you glue it together. This is big enough to cover most pieces or multiple pieces. The only thing is the length of the blade. This isn't quite long enough, so I had to use like a second sheet to cover it. So there is a seam in my blade, which I wasn't happy with, but it looks okay. There is 2 seams in my blade. Glue each edge down. So for this part, you're gonna really have to use a low temp glue gun, which is fine when you're covering the pieces with the plastic, but it makes putting the sword together a little bit more difficult. So after you have all the pieces covered in pink translucent plastic, you're gonna glue it together just like the other sword. With the other sword, I used hot glue, and hot glue, you have a little bit more time to work with it before it dries. So with this one, I can put a ton of glue on it, hold the piece together, wait for it to cool down, and then I'm good to go. With low temp, because it's not as hot, it tends to dry faster. With the holographic one, you're working really fast, so you can't put as much glue like on between each piece. So you put just enough and you hold it, and then after it's together, you have to put more glue on the seam so it could really stay together. So that's just an extra step. The holographic sword is more fragile and harder to make, but I think it looks the best. I hope that was enough information to explain how I made my swords. I didn't want to make a step-by-step tutorial because I already have one too many swords. I didn't want to have two too many swords. Alright, till next time. Bye!